Welcome to the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Brenda. And this is a podcast where we highlight educators who innovate, engage, and inspire through the use of technology. Today on the My Tech Toolbelt podcast, we get to interview Laura McComb.
So we found Laura McComb. She's a third grade teacher in Alabama. We found her on Twitter.
We did.
We sort of Twitter stalked her for a while, and we were so excited about what we were seeing her do in her classroom. And so she is using Flipgrid in a way that I, as a Flipgrid user myself, I was blown away by what she is having her kids do. And I think our listeners will too.
Right, exactly. It was fun getting to talk to her. And so I think, without further ado, let's talk to Laura. Well, welcome today to the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. We are very excited today to welcome Laura McComb, coming all the way from Alabama. And we are in California, so it's a little bit of a time difference and a weather difference. But we're very excited. And so we just want to thank you, Laura, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for this invitation. I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you.
So today we're going to be talking about Flipgrid. But first, why don't you give us a little background about you, yourself? What led you to start teaching?
Well, my first degree is in Management Information Systems from the University of North Alabama in Florence. And so that became my first love of computers. And then I had my children, and I started subbing in my son's school and fell in love with teaching. And so I went back and got my master's in elementary education and started teaching at Lynn Fanning Elementary in Meridianville. I teach third grade, math, science, and social studies. And so then I started putting technology with my teaching, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
Excellent. At your school, what kind of student populations do you serve? What's the demographic?
We're a K-3 school and primarily Caucasian. We do have a good mix of African American and Hispanic. And we're not poverty, but not affluent either. So we're just kind of in the middle.
And then what type of technology do you currently have in your classroom as far as like hardware goes?
Right now, I have iPads and Chromebooks, and I do have access to more of those from our computer lab, but I have my own set of 8 and about 3 or 4 Chromebooks.
I think that's great because, a lot of times when we talk to teachers, we don't have one-to-one, so we can't possibly do anything. But, you're saying I have 8, and that's perfect. That's a good amount. You have access to more if you need it. But I like that. I think that, does every kid need one? No. You're able to do what you're doing, and you're doing some pretty amazing stuff. I can't wait to get to that part.
So now what I find interesting is, so you're coming from an MIS background, a Management Information Systems,
yes.
Very comfortable with computers. And then you make a switch to the classroom. Mm-hmm. And people may say that, that's easy for her because she already understands computers and she's not afraid of technology. Well, that might be true, but I'm sure that it's quite different being in the classroom with third graders versus at a corporation, correct?
Correct. Actually, working with students is a lot easier than working with adults. Because my students are not afraid to try anything. If I tell them about technology, they're more than willing to help. And in today's society, that's all they know is technology.
Right.
And so they're more tech savvy than I am sometimes. They can figure things out better than I can. But yeah, I'm not afraid to try things. So that's a good thing about it. And the reason I got started with this also is because our district has a technology integration mentor program. And so I am that person for my school. So I get to help other teachers integrate technology. So that was another thing that really drew me to this.
In that role as a technology integration mentor, I know you mentioned you teach the 3 subjects. You teach math, science, and social studies. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that the rest of your day is available to help the other teachers?
Not always, because I have 2 classes of math, science, and social studies. And so I have to do a lot of after-school training or, one-on-one teacher training, things like that. But I think you saw me because of my Twitter feed on my open house that my students conducted for the teachers.
That's what we got. That's how we ran into you. Yes.
Yes. Because I knew my teachers didn't want to stay after school again for another training of me standing up and telling them how to use it. They wanted to see how it was really implemented with students. And so my students provided an open house, and they came in and the teachers walked around, and my students told them all about the different things that we use in our classroom. And so they really could see how it was beneficial to the students. So that started all of that.
I bet that caused a buzz in your school.
It did.
It caused a buzz on Twitter.
And I'm actually conducting my a brain pop training this Thursday for the teachers who want to know about that, and then a boom learning training next Tuesday for the other teachers. They specifically wanted those different trainings. So I will train them, and then my students will go into their classrooms and train their kids on how to do it.
That's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
So the challenge that you were having was not necessarily with your students, or it wasn't necessarily an educational challenge that you were trying to fill to use Flipgrid. It was actually a professional learning challenge that you were trying to fill, and with Flipgrid for your faculty, which I think is a different spin, right? Because a lot of times, we're talking about, well, and we can talk about that. What was the need you were trying to fill and what are you doing with Flipgrid? And we'll get to that, because there's definitely the educational aspect and the curriculum aspect and the metacognitive processes that Flipgrid is. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But what actually inspired us to reach out to you was the fact that your kids taught your faculty. That was like just so mind blowing that it's like, why didn't we think of that sooner? So what exactly, when the kids were doing this activity with your teachers in this open house, just walk us through a little bit about what were they talking about with the teachers, with your colleagues and things like that. What was the goal for that?
Well, the goal was for my students to show teachers that students can use technology in the classroom with the different subjects. So my students had learned about Flipgrid. We'd done many Flipgrids. We did Boom Learning, which is digital task cards, and Chatterpix, which our pre-K and K really can do very easily. We did quizzes, we did Kahoot, and they made invitations to send to the teachers, and they hand-delivered those. Then we just set up our classroom. We were in a circle, and they prepared. For maybe a week, they had worked on researching all these different apps and what they were going to say. They even had little scripts that they had written. They made little place cards that they put in front of their desk to tell the teachers what they were showing them about or telling them about. And I just stood in the background. I did not have to do anything. I had hostesses that would greet the teachers and have them sign in and tell them what to do. And we had a pamphlet for all the things that they were going to learn about. And my kids they took it and ran with it. So the teachers just walked around and listened to what those students had to say. And it was unbelievable, the things that those kids told those teachers. And some of them, even some of my quiet kids were speaking to adults. And it was crazy, because it was like, okay, they really do know this stuff.
Right. And also, I think too, when you have a student or an individual that all of a sudden is put in charge, they blossom, in front of your eyes, where before they've taken the back seat of just the learner, but then now you've given them a responsibility, and I think that really makes a difference.
And I do think because of Flipgrid, they were able to do that, because they were able to have their voice and find their voice and be able to tell teachers what they were doing with it. And so because of that, we're moving on with, all right, let's take these small groups of teachers who are interested in this particular topic or app and move on with them. So it's hopefully going to spread throughout the school. So I'm excited about that.
That's great. I was actually thinking this is so much more than just a 21st century tech skill that you're teaching them. You're teaching them how to communicate effectively with adults. And in third grade, they have a hard time even making eye contact sometimes. And you taught them planning, organizational management. I mean, I'm thinking about all of the skills that you kind of just, being in charge of something like the hosts, and I mean, those are all skills that as educators, we sometimes think, how am I going to fit this into my day? Right? Like, how am I going to teach them, like, shake hands with your right hand, not your left hand? But what you were able to do was not just academic. It had so much more to character-based formation that you were able to give them, and those skills are so critical.
Yeah, we are a Leader in Me school, and so that's part of our Leader in Me training, is to be able to greet and to make eye contact and all that. So hopefully they'll get to carry that and be productive citizens is what I hope for them to become.
That's all we can hope for any of our kids.
Yes.
So what were the teacher reactions when they were teaching, when your students were teaching the teachers?
They were totally amazed. I mean, they were like, oh, I didn't realize we could do that with this particular thing. Or, and then they ask them questions like with the Brain Pop, is there a Brain Pop Junior for this? And then just specific things for their students, because we have K through 3. So a lot of the teachers were worried that maybe their younger students couldn't do this. But when they saw my students do it, and my students were like, well, we'll come and show your kids if you want us to. They were offering their class time to come and show. So
they're so generous.
They are so generous. And then one of our teachers, her husband actually works at our central office, and she stopped and picked up my phone and called him and said, you need to get over here. He couldn't because of meetings, but she said, you need to do this again. We need to invite people from central office to see this. And now my kids are like, when are we going to do it again? When are we going to do it again?
I know. Well, even watching this or seeing the pictures that you had posted online, it made me think, well, that would be really neat to have for an open house or a back to school night or something like that. That you could now you're involving the parents to find out what they're doing in the classroom and the significance of where they all the different possibilities that they have.
Well, we're because of Leader and Me, we're doing student-led conferences. And so hopefully we'll get to incorporate a lot of this with our student-led conferences, that our parents can actually see what our kids are doing, and they can explain how they presented their research on Native Americans or how they did their research and how they presented it. So hopefully they'll get to do that soon.
I love student-led conferences. I really encourage that. And I think if you do have a conference where the student is not involved, have the parents do a Flipgrid recording for the students and say, gosh, I heard all about these really great things you did, and now... That's a really good idea. I have to steal that. I stole it from someone else. I think I stole it from Pinto Beans, Christina Pinto from Twitter. But yeah, I that's a way that if you're not going to include the student in that, there's and they're private, you just have it private and you can just show that one kid. So it's pretty cool. So tell us some of the things. So we want to talk about Flipgrid today and just kind of the use of Flipgrid and how you're using it with your third graders. Do you use it for all 3 subjects?
I do try to. For math, recently finished area and perimeter. And we used our geo boards with our rubber bands, and I had them create a shape, and then they took a picture of it and explained the difference between perimeter and area with Flipgrid. And then everybody could watch everybody else's and comment, all that good stuff. And that helped me to know, yes, they do know the difference between finding area and finding perimeter. And with science, we did research on scientists, and they had to do a Flipgrid on presenting their research. Most of them would take a picture in Chatterpix and record it and then app smash it with Flipgrid, which was really awesome, and they loved doing that. We did continence research, and they did a Poplet, and then recorded that, and then put that in Flipgrid. So we try a lot to do that with Flipgrid, mostly at the end of our units or our topics, and that way it helps me to understand if they know what's going on. Recently, I bought that pop-up tent to record in, and
this is like a freestanding...
It is, yeah. It's the freestanding green tent thing. And it was like on a Friday after our multiplication quiz, and I really wanted to try it out. It happened to be Counselor's Week. And so I had my kids go in and record a message to our counselor. And then I sent all of that grid to her. And she came back the next day in tears. She said, you wouldn't believe the things that they said to me, which they would not have said out loud.
Right.
But in that private little tent, they could say what they wanted to say to her. And so that was awesome. We'll
put a picture of your tent because you posted that on Twitter. So we'll embed a picture of that on in the podcast.
I think I stole that idea too, but
hey man, we're teachers. It's all good. That's what teachers share.
And you had this tent in your classroom, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And my one very, very shy girl who does not want to talk in front of people asked if we would leave the room so she could record.
Wow.
And so when we did, and then it was priceless, the things that she said. Aww. And she would not have said that and felt comfortable unless she was comfortable with using Flipgrid.
That's amazing.
So it's made a big difference.
I love their motto is they're giving a voice to the voiceless, and it's all about student voice. And Flipgrid it's skyrocketed in the last 12 months. I mean, we've talked about this before. Is just they went from kind of being this kind of quiet, sleepy little, like, the people who knew about it, and I was like, this is a really cool tool, to like the explosion that happened, I would say, the summer of 2017, early 2017 to through that summer. I remember they hit like however many million boards or whatever, and it was just an amazing. Flipgrid Fever was the hashtag that was all over trending, and I wish I would have known about this sooner, because it has really changed the way, even the way I teach in higher education. I mean, I'm using this with current teachers and administrators in the graduate courses and they're like, what is this magic? It really has changed the way, the reflective process, the metacognitive process. I've seen kindergartners be able to totally articulate a math problem and explain their reasoning, holding up the whiteboard and being like, this is what I did and this is why I did it. Now, the problem could be totally wrong, but like, hey, man.
As long as I can explain what they did.
They can talk it out. I mean, that's how many adults can't do that, right? So I love that tool. The collaboration piece is also extremely valuable, allowing the kids to be able to talk to each other. And I bet when your kids were doing the area and perimeter, if someone made a mistake, I bet someone who commented on it was probably like, I think you might be mistaken.
Yes,
yeah,
they did. But it was not in a harmful way. Right. It was a very, very kind way. It has helped my dyslexic students because they don't have to write. They can just talk. And so that's helped them out a lot as well.
Right. And I would imagine, like, if you have any stutters or anyone else who has a hard time collecting their thoughts, maybe they'll feel more relaxed. Or if they make a mistake, it's okay. Nobody cares.
Well, a lot of mine, if they'll listen to it back, and if they don't like it, they'll start over.
Right.
So they'll self-correct, which is another great tool to have.
Yes. Is
to be able to self-correct.
So you shared a lesson plan with us. Could you walk us through that a little bit? Could you just kind of take us through kind of how you would, and it's a lesson plan where you've embedded Flipgrid into the process.
Yeah, it's basically the one I did on area and perimeter. We had modeled area and perimeter before using geo boards with our rubber bands and gone over and over the difference between area and perimeter and how to find them. And, when you're standing in front of a classroom, you're really not sure sometimes who really gets it and who's just looking at somebody else. And it's hard to call on every student to make sure that they're getting it because they're listening to each other. Well, I thought I really need to know who knows the difference between area and perimeter. So they love the geo boards. So we took the geo boards and I had them design, make their own shape, and then take the Flipgrid and just take the picture of it and then show me the difference between area and perimeter. And that way I knew for sure that they understood the difference. Because, like I said, in the classroom, they're looking around at each other. You have your ones who are going to speak out every time, and you have your others who are holding back and waiting to see what somebody else said. And a lot of times they'll be like, "Oh, I agree with her. What she said." And I'm like, "But I need to hear what you. I need to know what you know, not what your neighbor knows." So that was one of the greatest things. That's the best thing I think with Flipgrid. It's just helping me to understand what my kids understand.
Right. But I'm sure that having the process does take a while, right?
It does. And it's noisy. That's why one of the reasons I bought the tent, but you can still hear, but it's more private. But we were out in the hallway, we're everywhere. And one of the things we had to learn is video techniques because I was getting no shots of them having the Flipgrid, the iPad down and looking up their face, and those kind of things. And so we've had to learn how to do that as well. Yeah, it's an amazing tool.
What about your process of grading? Obviously, that's time commitment as well, right? Because to go through 20 or 35-minute videos or 3-minute videos can be time consuming on your end.
It can, but the greatest thing is I can do it from my house.
That's true.
I can sit at home and I can look at them and I can stop if I want to, and and it's not like I have to sit and lug through papers and go through papers and read all those. I can just sit there and watch their little videos very quickly and comment on them for them. Make the comments on them right away. There's certain things I look for. On this one, I was looking for clearly stating the difference between area and perimeter and how to find it, those kind of things. So that's what I use, the rubric that I attached for it.
So I have a Flipgrid Classroom Edition as well. One of the things that I really like about it is that I can put the kind of a rubric in there. I can put my own. It defaults to like a performance and something, but I can change it to kind of be maybe 3 or 4 key things that I'm looking for while I'm watching it, and I can do that. You mentioned that you can comment right back to the student via typing, and it will send them a little message. But the other thing that it has is specifically for the teacher to comment back to the student privately. Flipgrid, the Classroom Edition, allows you to record a private message from the teacher to the student, and where no one else will see that. So it's like private feedback.
Right.
Or you have the option of giving group feedback, like for that student and everyone else to watch, kind of a thing. So that's a really nice feature with the Classroom Edition. So, Laura, will you walk us through how you're using Flipgrid to kind of meet the needs of some of your special populations, for example, maybe English language learners or any kids with special accommodations that you might have?
Yes, I do have an English language learner, and I do have some SPED, but I also have some dyslexia. So that's when Flipgrid comes in play for me, because they don't have to sit and write anything to explain it to me, especially with my SPED too. They can just show me what they know with a picture, or they can talk to me, and that way I can understand if they get it or not. And if they don't, then the next day I can pull them for a small group. We can go over it again, and I can figure out where are they missing parts of that concept or that understanding. So that's when I can pull them aside and go over it again.
Excellent. A great form of remediation for that.
And quick question for those not in the know, like me.
Okay.
SPED?
Special education.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's what I figured, but I just wanted to
clarify. I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
And special populations tends to include anybody that needs special accommodations, maybe visually impaired, auditorily impaired, any kind of a special population.
Right.
Dyslexia, anybody who might need an IEP or anything special. One of the other things that Flipgrid does that I love, you'd think Flipgrid might give me a little shout out on the...
You're the ambassador. I want to be an ambassador like you.
So the other thing I like is that it will put what am I trying to say, Brenda? Transcribes. Sorry. Just later where you are than it is here. It will transcribe, and it'll do its best. And I've gone in and had to edit a couple of things because sometimes I mumble a little bit. But for the most part, it does a pretty good job transcribing so that kids you can actually do the text to speech, so you can hear it, and the kids who it's I don't know, it's just a really cool piece that it will do for you. And then I think you can export it as well, as I recall.
I think so. Mm-hmm.
So pretty cool. Anyways,
and that's a good way to get them working on their dictation or their
clear speaking.
Yes,
correct. Yeah, and that way they can see what it's sounding like.
Yep. So have you noticed, since you've been working with Flipgrid, how many years have you been working with Flipgrid?
This is just my first year.
First year. So you got Flipgrid Fever.
I do really bad.
Have you noticed that it's increasing your student achievement or student engagement?
Yes, more of the engagement, because they really want to use it. They really want to record. I think they feel like they're doing some kind of, I don't know, Snapchat or whatever they think they're doing, but they really want to record themselves and hear themselves. We did have a couple of snow days not too long ago, and I sent a Flipgrid out for them to tell me what they were doing on their snow days. And they are just like, can we watch it? When can we watch it? When can we, they're so excited and they want to share. And they just like seeing themselves and hearing themselves. Some do more than others, but the engagement is there. They want to show me what they know. I think because of that, and they know that other friends are going to see them, they are trying to do their best, and they are trying to understand what they're trying to show me before they actually record it and show me.
So therefore, that there's a level of increased student engagement, which is contributing most likely to an increased student achievement.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And that's funny you had mentioned your snow day. I think I had seen somewhere else that one of the PE teachers used Flipgrid on a snow day so that they could tell their students, well, yeah, I need you to see you doing 10 jumping jacks and, all these different, or show me that you went and played outside, for your PE credit today. And I thought, that's pretty cool. I like that. That's a great idea.
Well, because they can do it on a mobile device.
Right.
Yeah.
So, they could take mom or dad's phone or their own phone, depending on what age they are, and just get out there and do stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, I had a parent say, I walked out in the garage and my son was videotaping my other son who's in your class. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm doing my Flipgrid, Mom. It's like, okay.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds
Right.
like it's probably. Is that a thing? Okay, so that's a great question. So how did you communicate that you were using all of this technology to your parents? Like, how did they respond to that?
Well, I sent them an email and just told them what we were doing and told them that their children know exactly what this is and how to do it. And it was totally optional for them to do it. And I had like 10 or 12 of them actually respond to it. And the parents were like, that is the coolest thing ever. That you can do that and communicate with your child, and my child can communicate with you even when we're not there. So I really hope to, in the future, really push that out a little bit more, especially maybe giving them an assignment, just a simple one, and just so that they don't stop the learning. We've had a lot of sickness here. We've had a lot of flu and things here. And, I don't want to do it when they're sick, but I thought, even if I record myself doing the lesson,
Right.
then they won't be behind. So I've got to step up my game on that and really get to doing that a little bit more.
Are you guys using a learning management system or Google
Yes,
Classroom?
we use Canvas.
Okay.
And so, I need to push it out through Canvas a little bit more on that as well. Lots of opportunities.
There is. I believe that learning happens all day, every day around us, and that it should not only happen in the four walls of a classroom or in the school building. Every minute of every day is an opportunity, and what it sounds like you're doing is you're inspiring those kids to be curious and to want to connect back with you, to show you that they're doing things, that they're out in the snow playing, or that they're doing their Flipgrid, and that makes a lifelong learner. And I don't care what field you go into, right? Like, we want those kinds of kids out. I want those kinds of kids to be in office and making decisions when I'm old. Right? I want the people who are, kids who are curious and that want to give back and reconnect. So
yes,
that's my soapbox. Sorry. My bad.
Those productive citizens.
That's right. And you've got the technology now. It's this tool that is just super inspiring and engaging for them.
So, okay, one other question for you about your journey, I guess. How do you feel like Flipgrid has helped you grow as a teacher?
I would really hope that I can meet these students where they are technology-wise, and they know so much more than I know. And I'm learning from them as well. With Flipgrid, they take their selfie. Well, they've put stickers on their pictures and I didn't even know you could do all that. And, I want to be a lifelong learner. I want to know how I can reach my students through technology. What can I do to make it more beneficial for both of us, more productive for both of us? Just meet them where they are. I mean, my third graders, they have had technology all their lives. They don't know any different. And so I want to be where they are. I want to help them, and I want to learn as much as I can to share with them.
And you said that you were a tech integration mentor. And is that only for your school or for your whole district?
No, that is only for my school. We have one at every one of our schools in our district, from elementary and intermediate schools, middle schools, and high schools.
So has the other schools in your district been using Flipgrid as well?
Oh, yes. Some more than others, but especially I think more maybe of our middle and high school, but the elementary is trying. Because not all of our younger kids have devices that they can use at home. And so we do it mostly during the classroom time, but I think the upper grades are using it through Canvas and things like that at home a lot more than we are.
For your students, your third grade, so the learning curve when you introduced Flipgrid was a couple of days, couple of minutes,
It took a while. Especially, like I said, with the how to video each other or how to video yourself, because they were doing it all back and forth, and you would see just different things. And then at one point I had to have some correction because I wasn't there in the classroom a day. I was actually off campus, and I had my sub working with Flipgrid. My kids were doing it, and one little girl was dancing in behind the other girl when they were video. And I got that notification while I was in the meeting, and I was like, oh, okay. So the next day I'm like, we need to talk about some etiquette here. And so those kind of things. But they picked up on how to do it very well. But the technique of how to do it we're still working on, just how to hold it and how to speak clearly and look into the camera and all that kind of thing. So we're still working on it, but they're, like I said, they know a lot about it, more about it sometimes than I do.
So you're using it on iPads, but it works on any device. It works on Chromebooks. It works on any kind of computer with a webcam and a microphone, and it works on mobile devices. So if you only had an iPhone or an Android phone, or it would work on that.
It will work. It will.
And so are you using the classroom version or are you using the free version?
I use the free version because I just have one classroom grid and then I have different topics underneath.
Excellent. So the version that you're using is free to all teachers. You just sign up. And you get one grid, and then the topics are the different ones that you create, whatever you want your students to respond to. And you can have them active, which means the students can respond to it. You can hide it all together, make it inactive, students don't see it. Or you can freeze it where they can go in and see things, but they can't add anything to it.
Right.
Versus there is a paid classroom version, which I believe is about
it's $65.
$65. I was going to say $69, so I was close. It's about $60 and change, under $70 for a year license. And that gives you multiple grids. So if you had, because it sounds like you teach like all the third grade subjects.
Well, I have 2 classes of math, science, and social studies. So we team teach.
You could have like science, social studies, math. You could have grids for each of the subject areas and then the topics underneath.
Right.
And it does add, other features, the length, right? You do definitely not want to go 5 minutes with your students. So the free version, I think, only goes up to a minute and a half, or
I think so.
Yeah, but you have other intervals in the paid version. So I think there are pros and cons, and you would just, as an educator, we don't make a lot of money, and we tend to pay a lot of our own money for
yes, we do.
For these types of services. So I think that a paid version is nice, but I love when a free version really does what you need it to do. So that's pretty amazing. Who knows, maybe Flipgrid will hear this and they'll be like, Laura gets a free license to Flipgrid. Hint, hint, Flipgrid.
That would be great, Flipgrid.
And another thing I heard you say that I think is really just, I want to circle back because I'm talking a lot, so sorry.
No,
Brenda, but another thing I heard you say was that the kids were using it not only as an independent, but they're using it collaboratively, right? You've had them work in teams and do things, and I think that's something that maybe if you're new to Flipgrid and you want to get ideas, I think that's a great way. Can you just tell us individually? I don't think we need training, but like tell me about some of the collaborative activities that you've had your students do.
Well, recently we were studying Alabama Native Americans, and so I had them broke into our 4 tribes that we have in Alabama, and they had to do the research and find out specific things about that tribe. And then they could choose how they wanted to present it, and Flipgrid was one of the choices that a lot of them made. And so they had to decide who was going to speak at certain times, and who was going to video and all that kind of stuff. So they had to work collaboratively together to figure out all of those things. And so it's very interesting to walk around and hear them talk as a group about how they want to accomplish those goals. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to make sure that they understand how to do is work with groups, because very rarely as an adult do you work by yourself on some things. Right. You have to work with others. And so, then you see little personalities come out. You see leaders come out, and you see people who may not have stepped up and said anything earlier say, no, I want to do this part, and so that was really an eye-opener for me too as well when we did the group presentations. And so then I showed them on the screen, and they got to listen to each other's and get the information from each other. But those collaborative groups are really what I want to see with Flipgrid as well.
Well, and especially because they have to be so succinct when they're doing this. They only have a minute and 30 seconds. And if there's 4 of them and they all want to talk, that could be challenging.
When you did this collaborative lesson, did you assign them their responsibilities in this project, or were they free to decide you're going to handle this, you're going to handle that, I'll do that?
They decided on their own because I wanted to see how they could do it, see if they could figure out who needed to do what. And there was a few arguments on a few things, but they worked it out.
So thinking about other people who might be using or interested in using Flipgrid, we like to include, like, how might someone who's homeschooling their children utilize Flipgrid in that kind of a setting? And you kind of touched on it with the, like, okay, it's a snow day, so, that kind of assignment. But, if I was a homeschooling parent or a student, how might I engage with this, and what might be the benefits for that?
I do believe that Flipgrid has some global grids that you could search and find on Twitter or whatever, and you could participate in those as well. I haven't tried that yet, but I have seen those. And so I think that would be one way that the homeschoolers could connect. And I think most homeschoolers have a home base that they have to go to. And so they could talk to each other through Flipgrid and then come together and discuss what they put on their Flipgrids.
That's great. Hopefully this is getting out to the homeschool community. I know it's definitely like wildfire spreading through the teacher community.
Mm-hmm. Laura, you had mentioned the global connections?
Yes.
So I'd also heard that there's like a discovery library in Flipgrid. Have you used that? That's like a teacher sharing topics or something?
I have not used it. I have heard of it and seen things on Twitter about it, but no, I have not followed it and done it yet. So I'd like to try that as well with my students.
Because that is like it's its own grid, I guess. Is that what you?
It is. It's its own grid where you can post like templates. Teachers can post templates, and right now there's almost 2,000 different topics.
Wow.
Out there, and you can pretty much search for who your audience is or the subject area. There's tons and tons of different subject areas. And then also what the goal of it is. Is it an exit ticket or is it a family, letter to the parents, whatever. Or you can search just by a keyword. So, obviously right now, big science STEM initiatives, things like that. So you'll see a lot of that. It looks like there's actually a international dual language. That's also, that's another thing. I think Flipgrid is an amazing tool for teachers who teach a foreign language.
Right.
What better way to assess whether the kid has the pronunciation, the student, sorry, students listening. The student has the right pronunciation, the right mastery of the language, inflection, all those kinds of things I think are really cool. So language teachers use Flipgrid. I'm just going to say that right now.
Do you know who else would benefit from this? Speech teachers.
Speech therapists, speech pathologists.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the kids could actually see themselves and how they move their mouths and whatever they have to do. So that would be a really good thing to do.
Even having them, I just thought of another thing.
See, Flipgrid Fever.
Yes. Flipgrid Fever, totally. I've had it for months. Having them read. So I've never been a big fan of like popcorn reading. Sorry for everybody who is a big fan of popcorn reading or theater reading, because there are students, who the teacher relies on an equity stick or something. And, my son came home the other day and he's like, I didn't get to read today. And I was like, why not? He goes, my stick didn't get pulled today. And I was like, man. And the kids who have the stutter or the kids who don't feel comfortable reading out loud or get really nervous or,
That was me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you and I talked about this, right? You were just, so what if you could practice
right
in a nice quiet space like the tent that Mrs. McComb has in her classroom? What if you could practice reading to the point where you could maybe overcome that stutter or just be more comfortable or record yourself reading and then listening back to it and then, highlighting, I don't know what this word means, and then you can communicate that to your teacher. Now, you only get a minute and a half, so I get that. But like you said, they can watch it and then go, okay, that one sounded good. I'm going to delete and I'm going to go to the next one. And they can get to a one where they're definitely challenged, and that's the one they leave for you, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. There's cool ways. Mm-hmm. Although you're going to get that
possibilities.
Free, I'm hoping that free license comes in for you. Good, Laura. I'm really,
Me too, please.
I'm pushing for you. Hashtag Joel from Flipgrid. Come on.
That would be awesome.
I'm not calling anybody out, but hopefully.
But Joel.
So yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's the possibilities are endless. I think to get this into the hands of the students. So let me ask you this, Laura, because you've been in the information systems, you've been in kind of technology in your first career, you're in this awesome second career where you're exposing these kids to this amazing technology. What do you think is on the horizon in education technology? What's coming for these kids?
Ooh, that's hard to say.
I'm stumping you.
Yeah, you are.
Or what do you hope that's coming?
Yeah.
Ooh, well, for our district, I hope we're going 1-to-1, but I don't know that that'll happen anytime soon. But yeah, because it's so much different when the kids have to share a device versus whether they have their own. And I just, I think that would be a really awesome thing to have. I'm not really sure what other technology will be in the future.
So are you then a proponent of bring your own device?
Yes and no. I think there's a time for it, just like there's a time for technology and there's not a time for it. So I think you'd have to be very careful as to when you allow them to use it and when you didn't. But if it was for these production purposes or to do Flipgrid, then yes, I think so.
And so, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your first year teacher self?
Oh, wow. Just to chill. And like I've said, I started this career later in life, so I've had to adjust a lot to what these kids actually are capable of doing and give them more credit for what they're capable of doing, especially with technology. Like I said, they know so much more than I ever knew at their age, or didn't have it then, but just trust them to make the decisions that they need to make as to how they want to present their information to me.
What advice do you have? I mean, I think you just kind of hit on it, is what for teachers who would be just starting out in this, so new teachers coming into your district and they're fresh out of teacher school. They haven't had me as a professor. So they haven't been exposed to a lot of things,
Or older teachers who haven't used any technology.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. And just who have maybe been a little apprehensive. You would tell yourself to chill, but how do you get them kind of overcome those scary barriers?
Well, and I've run into this a lot with my classroom and my students, not necessarily my students, but my teachers. When we first got iPads and things like that, it was here's a math app, go sit in the corner or go sit over here and do this and play the games. And there's so much more to that. And I'm trying very slowly to get my teachers to realize the benefits of it. And so I think when we did the open house and they could actually see what the students were doing and how they were making it productive, that's changed a lot. And so I'm slowly working with small groups of teachers at a time to get them to do this, because I see the pros and cons of technology. I love technology, but sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it drives me crazy. But we have to meet them where they are, and this is where they are. And if we allow them to be creative with it and we allow them to use it to show us what they know, then they'll take ownership of it, and we do give them that voice.
I think that's great. And you being a mentor, I think you're obviously in on both sides, right? You are the teacher and the mentor. And how important do you think it is for teachers to have mentors or a buddy that will walk them through the process or give them encouragement?
I think it's very important. And like I said, I've tried to present to the whole faculty, but it's just like buckshot. You don't know who you're going to get. But with small groups and taking a few teachers and really showing them the benefits and how to do it, then that wildfire is going to spread and they're going to share and other teachers they don't want to be left out. We don't like to be left out. We want to see what everybody else is doing. And we don't want to, if somebody's doing a great job, then we want to see what they're doing to do that great job. And so we're very competitive with each other. We don't want to be the last one to learn how to do something.
So do you have district-wide PDs and like smaller group as well all the time?
Okay. We do have district-wide PDs on some technology, and all the technology mentors go to meetings to learn about more things. And then it's our job to take it back to our schools and share it with our teachers there.
So speaking of sharing, you will be presenting in June.
Yes.
Will you share because people in your district, people who maybe want to come hear you and see you live in IRL in real life can come and check you out? Where can they find you?
I will be presenting at the North Alabama Technology Conference at Meridianville Middle School in June. I think it's the third week of June. And then I'm actually going to be presenting on BrainPop. I'm a certified BrainPop educator, so I will be presenting on BrainPop along with a friend of mine, Sherry Appel. And
shout out to Sherry. Good job,
Shout out Sherry, yeah. We're excited about that. I did not realize what all BrainPop had to offer, so I'm excited to share all of that with everyone as well. Presenting there in June.
Awesome. And so if our listeners want to get a hold of you, what is the best way?
They can follow me on Twitter. It's at LBMcComb, LBMCCOMB.
We'll put that in our show notes and all of our other goodies so they can follow you. Hopefully your Twitter population will just skyrocket. And, thank you.
Yes.
I mean, thank you for the time today. I think what you're doing is phenomenal and exciting, and you're making a difference with those kids and all the teachers that you're supporting at your school site and throughout your district. I hope they know how lucky they are to have you. I'm so glad that you found this career, because I think being a teacher is such an amazing career. And that is why we started this podcast, was to highlight teachers like you in the trenches every day, working your little tails off and just doing amazing things that need to be shared with the world. So thank you so much. Thank you for letting us share your story with our listeners. And
thanks for joining us, the My Tech Toolbelt podcast.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm just one of many who are doing great things here in our district. And I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
It was great getting to know
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
You too.
Hey, listeners, I've got some great news for you. Flipgrid has offered to only the My Tech Toolbelt podcast listeners a code that will get you a free 90-day trial of Flipgrid Classroom. Now, this is only available to the first 50 people that chooses to use this offer code. And the code is My Tech Toolbelt. So please use that code, MyTechToolbelt, to receive a free 90-day trial of Flipgrid Classroom. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening to the My Tech Toolbelt podcast. If you have enjoyed listening, please rate us on Apple Podcasts or send us some feedback on our website, mytechtoolbelt.com. We would love to hear from you. This will help us deliver the content that you want to hear. Thanks, and we're out.